World Cup qualifying is back. Greg Berhalter has named 27 players to the fifth and final World Cup qualifying roster for the U.S. men's national team. Let's take a look at who those players are, how the team could line up, and what the plan should be for this upcoming round of World Cup qualifying. My name is Alex and welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, follow me on Twitter and TikTok, especially Twitter. That's where you're going to get more updates and opinions from me. But let's jump right into this video. So over here on the right, you're going to see the roster, and we're going to start with the goalkeepers as we always do. And there have been 3 goalkeepers named, and there really should not be any surprise here. Matt Turner, injured. Nothing to do with frostbite. He's just injured. Zach Steffen comes back from injury just in time for this camp. Very interesting that he's right back into the fold. Ethan Horvath didn't start all year. He has not been involved in the national team since September, where he was the backup. Well, he's back because he's actually been playing games for Nottingham Forest and has rightfully earned a spot on this team, and it is in contention to start, according to Greg Berhalter. And rightfully so. Sean Johnson is the 3rd goalkeeper. Not a surprise. He's been in every camp. He's just a really good number 3 goalkeeper. He's a good locker room guy. He recognizes his role. Maybe not much of a long-term future, and not really someone I'd be super comfortable with if they're having to step in between the sticks, but I don't think that's going to be necessary at any point, so I'm not too worried. Gaga Slonina of the Chicago Fire is the omission here. He was the 4th choice goalie in the initial roster last time. Of course, didn't play. He wasn't with the U20 roster either. That's raised a couple eyebrows. That's just because the Fire did not release him. The Fire instead released Chris Brady, the backup for the Fire, to the under-20 camp, so there's no issue there. Gaga Slonina is the alternative for the U.S. men's senior team in this camp. On to the center backs, and there are 5. There are going to be 3 omissions. 2 of them are for injury-related reasons. Chris Richards still hurt after injuring himself on the turf in Hamilton, Ontario against Canada. And then, of course, Mark McKenzie is also not here. He has been in every camp, only 2 appearances throughout qualifying, but he has been in every camp. I believe he has an illness right now, so speedy recovery to him, but he is not in this camp either. Who comes in? Eric Palmer-Brown and Aaron Long. We'll start with Aaron Long, who was the captain a lot of the time in 2019, the first year of Berhalter, and was really one of the leaders of the team, at least in his eyes. He did train with the team in November, did train with the team in January, didn't make the final roster in January, but he started the season with New York. It's not crazy that he's in this roster. He's not the biggest surprise. Eric Palmer-Brown comes in. He has had a really, really good couple of weeks for Troyes over in Ligue 1, stepping in as a starting center back. I really like him because he's a ball-playing center back who can progress the ball well out of the back. If he does see the field, I will feel very comfortable with him. The 3rd guy who comes into this team is James Sands. He was in the first roster in September, played 1 game against Honduras as a midfielder, and then came in as an injury replacement for the Jamaica game in November, did not play. But I'm a little surprised to see him here, and we'll come back to this a little bit later when we look at how the team could line up, but James Sands, I'm not sure how he fits into the way this team has traditionally set up throughout World Cup qualifying. He hasn't been in every game started at Rangers. He's only played a couple of games for them, so it's a little odd to see him here over John Brooks, who, of course, Greg Berhalter in the press conference said he just didn't offer what the team wanted for this specific camp. I'm not sure if that means there are other issues and that's just a useful excuse. I don't want to make too many assumptions, but he did imply that he will have opportunities to get back into the fold before the World Cup. I didn't talk about Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman. We know what we're going to get from these 2. They are probably the 2 starters in this team. They are the A pairing right now in the eyes of Greg Berhalter and most people at this point. So it's good to see them both back here, both fit, both ready to go, both in season, which they were not in January. On to the fullbacks, and this one is subject to change. I'll address the elephant in the room. Serginho Dest went down injured against Galatasaray in the Europa League. Will he be available for this camp? We'll find out tomorrow. The answer is likely no if he is hurt. and they will likely call in a left back as a replacement, probably George Bello from Arminia Bielefeld. We'll see. That's subject to change. We'll find out soon. But as for the other guys, Reggie Cannon is probably another option at right back. He's been playing as a right center back recently for Boavista, which is interesting, but he's an option at right back for this team. DeAndre Yedlin recently made the move to Inter Miami of MLS. He's been alright since returning stateside. There's no surprise he's going to be here because he's been in every camp since September. What's interesting is he was actually only in that first camp, supposedly, because Julian Araujo turned down the call-up and he came in as a replacement. But he's taken that opportunity because he's been a really good contributor throughout the fall, though he didn't play in January. Anthony Robinson is the starter at left back, there's no doubt. He will very, very likely go 270 minutes playing this entire camp, even though there are 2 games at altitude. He's going to have to do that job because there's no other left backs in camp. I would have liked to see George Bello or Jonathan Gomez, or honestly, any left back as a backup, just to have an option. Even if they don't play, I'd like to have an actual left back backup. But it is what it is. Anthony Robinson is capable of doing 270, so hopefully he will do that and will provide something going both ways, offensively and defensively. Over to the midfield, and as always, I've split it into defensive midfielders and attacking midfielders. Attacking midfielders being 8s and 10s, collectively defensive midfielders referring to the 6s. Kellen Acosta and Tyler Adams have been the 6s for every camp of World Cup qualifying, and there's only one guy who played the 6 throughout this whole cycle who wasn't one of these 2, and that was James Sands for that second half against Honduras. I think there's no doubt that Tyler Adams is the best and Kellen Acosta is the second best, and they offer different things, so it's nice to have 2 options. Worth noting, Tyler Adams is on a yellow card, so if he does pick up a yellow against Mexico, he'll miss the Panama game, but other than that, not much to talk about here. Kellen Acosta set pieces are something that are really valuable, so maybe we do actually start him over Adams in Mexico, though I don't think that's something that we will see. As for the attacking midfielders, this is made difficult by the fact that Weston McKennie is sadly injured for the rest of the season and is thus unavailable for this camp. Yunus Musa, therefore, is the go-to guy, starting for Valencia, started for the U.S. men's national team pretty much every chance he's gotten in the fall and in January as well. So Yunus Musa, definitely a player who is going to be a big contributor in this camp. And Luca De La Torre got an opportunity to start against Honduras in the last camp, took that opportunity, and yes, it was a very poor Honduras team, and it's really hard to take too much away from that, but he performed well enough in that game to earn another look and earn an opportunity in this camp where he may be asked to play a really big role, maybe even start as Tekka with Weston McKennie out, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Another option to fill that 8 role next to Yunus Musa is Gianluca Buzio of Venezia in Serie A. He's not been the best over the last 2 months, just for a combination of reasons. Injury, COVID, suspension. It's just kind of been a rough couple of weeks since the beginning of January for a lot of reasons that were out of his control. But regardless, he's back in this team and is someone who I believe can be an option as an 8 or as a 6. So we'll see where he ends up playing in this camp. Christian Roldan, I don't think, should have been here. We'll talk about one really big omission from this camp in just a moment, but he's been playing all right. He's been playing all right for Seattle, but he's just never been able to do that for the national team. He's never been able to replicate that form, never been able to actually contribute in any meaningful way. 0 goals in 31 caps, 2 assists. That's it. Georgie Mihailovich, who is the player who had the most assists in Major League Soccer last season, absolutely dominated Santos in the Champions League last week, had an admirable performance in a loss to Cruz Azul. I don't know why he's not here. He played at Azteca last week, so he knows what that's like. Not that that's super important, but I think there's no way that he shouldn't have been here. He's a great playmaking option to have, even if he's not going to start. He's a guy you can bring off in the 70th minute to carve apart a team that is maybe tired and in a low block. He would have been a great option to have against Canada that we didn't have, but so be it. We do not have Georgie Mihailovich for this camp. Christian Roldan is the option instead. No Sebastian Lletget, also worth noting. I don't think he's done enough to impress Greg Berhalter either. But only 3 natural 8s here, Buzio, De La Torre, and Musa. Roldan really is a winger for Seattle, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens and if Gio Reyna, maybe, can potentially play this position. But let's go over to the wingers. And there are 6 wingers, which honestly seems a little bit unnecessary to me. I don't think you need 6 wingers because you rotate a little bit, but 6? That makes me think that Gio Reyna is going to get some time in the midfield, especially with there only being 3 to 4 8s being called up. Christian Pulisic has been in ridiculous form for Chelsea, probably his best form since Project Restart in mid-2020. It's great to see him in this form. He scored in both legs against Tim Weah's Lille in the Champions League knockout rounds. He's probably going to start every game, and he's going to have to be the guy who can step up as a leader to put this team over the line and get to Qatar. Tim Weah hasn't been at his best lately. He hasn't been playing a whole lot for Lille. He's been coming off the bench a bit, not really starting games, which is a little bit concerning, and I don't think he's 100% ready to necessarily play a full 90 minutes or 60 minutes even in a lot of these games. So he's probably going to be an option off the bench in this camp, at least in the first game. Brendan Aronson is an option I really like for the altitude games because he can run for days. His lungs are very, very strong, and he won't be afraid of just running around and causing trouble, even if, again, he's not the most talented player here behind Weah, Reyna, and obviously Christian Pulisic. I think he definitely has a big role to play in this camp. But speaking of Areola and Jordan Morris, who are the 2 MLS guys and are a little bit behind the other 4 in this winger contingent, Paul Areola hasn't really been at his best throughout qualifying. It's safe to say he had that one good game against Jamaica. Other than that, he hasn't had too many minutes where he hasn't been that good at all. And then there's Jordan Morris, who was only in the last camp after coming back from a long-term ACL injury. He really hasn't looked good since coming back from that injury, and I'm happy for him to change my mind. I'm happy for him to step up and improve, but in 2022 he hasn't been that good in really any game he's played, though he has actually scored a couple goals in CONCACAF Champions League, so that is worth noting, and hopefully he can bring those goals from the CONCACAF Champions League into CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. And the last but not least is Gio Reyna. He's back from a very, very long-term injury. I'm very happy he's back because he is the key to this team's attack. He is the best playmaker potentially in this region, and is someone who can carve apart the opposition and will cause a lot of trouble if he can start games, though I don't think he'll be able to because he's just coming back. He just played 2 games coming back from injury. He'll probably be an option off the bench, but what an option to have off the bench for this team. As for the 9s, we have 3, and I can't say there are too many surprises here. Ricardo Pepe was the starter from October and November, and he's kind of lost his place, it's safe to say, because he hasn't been scoring goals. He went over to Ajax in the Bundesliga, yet to score, yet to make any sort of meaningful impact in the 2.5 months that he's been there. Jesus Ferreira is not really a traditional 9. He's been kind of playing as a deep-lying false 9 in some ways when he's played for the national team, but he's only seen as a 9 by Berhalter, so that's where he will play if he does get on the field, and I think he will start at least one of these games, though he hasn't necessarily been at his best for FC Dallas since signing that designated player contract earlier in the year. Jordan Peafock, unlike the other 2, has been scoring goals, and lots of them, though at a very low level. The Swiss League is worse than MLS. It's not a very high level, but he's been scoring goals, and he's been putting goals in the back of the net. That's something that Josh Sargent hasn't been doing, and that's why Josh Sargent isn't in this team. I should also address Gyasi Zardes because he's been in every roster when he's been fit. This is the first time that he's been dropped by Berhalter just as a straight-up coach's decision since he became the head coach of the U.S. men's national team. He's been missing from a couple rosters, either because of injury or club release or something. But this is the first time that he's just straight up not called up Gyasi Zardes because he has lost the starting job at the Columbus Crew. So I think we may have seen the last of Gyasi Zardes. But let me know who you think should start, because potentially if there's interest for it, I'll do a video specifically talking about this position and who should start in these games of World Cup qualifying. What's the best possible lineup for this team? Well, this is what I've got, and this is assuming the fitness of Reina and Weah, which I'm not 100% sure on. But the goalkeeper, Zach Steffen. Now, I honestly kinda would prefer Horvath, especially for Azteca, just because Steffen is really just coming back. He hasn't played a game since January, but I'm really fine either way. The center backs, Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman, with Chris Richards injured and John Brooks not in the picture at the moment. It's safe to say that these two are the best center back pairing, and there's no doubt at all about it. We'll just have to see if Greg Berhalter does decide to put Aaron Long in for some of these games. Assuming that Dest is out, I think DeAndre Yedlin is the best option at right back, with Anthony Robinson an option at left back, of course, because he's the only left back on the roster. The midfield for me, as I alluded to before, I would like to see Tyler Adams, Yunus Musa, and Gio Reyna together. Greg Berhalter didn't rule out the possibility of Gio Reyna as an 8, but I'm not holding my breath necessarily to see it. Christian Pulisic and Tim Weah, based on their performances throughout World Cup qualifying, Christian Pulisic just being the best player here, even if he hasn't been at his best throughout this cycle, he's still the best player and is absolutely a starter until he proves otherwise. Tim Weah, again, he's been our most effective attacker. He's probably been our best player in World Cup qualifying, if I'm being quite honest. So for me, Tim Weah is a starter if he's able to. Though, as I said before, maybe Brendan Aronson starts at Azteca. We'll see. Ricardo Pepe as the 9. I don't feel too good about this pick for a variety of reasons. I think Ricardo Pepe is so out of form and his confidence is so low right now that it's a rough decision to start him, but I don't think Jesus Ferreira is any better. I don't think Jesus Ferreira will give you really any goals. And Jordan Peafock, he's a big guy, he can get on headers, he's an aerial threat, and that's absolutely something he has going for him. But when he's in a game for more than 15 minutes, he really starts to fade out of it. And we saw that when he started against Canada earlier in World Cup qualifying. He really had no impact on that game, to be honest. The best games he's played for the national team were when he came off the bench against Honduras in the Nations League semifinal and obviously scored the winning goal, and when he came off the bench against El Salvador in the first game of World Cup qualifying, didn't score but was really a threat in the box in that game. So I'd absolutely like to see him as an option off the bench. I alluded to when I was talking about James Sands that he brought something a little bit different, and what I was referring to is that his best role is as a central center back in a back three where he can step into the midfield. And if we want to go conservative against Mexico, maybe James Sands comes into a back three. With Weston McKennie out, I think a double pivot of Tyler Adams and Kellen Acosta might be the best midfield option, just because I'm not really sure that anyone else at the 8 with Gio not fully fit is really trustworthy enough. So I think that this is a possibility. This isn't necessarily what I would do personally, but a back 5 with Miles Robinson, James Sands in the middle, Walker Zimmerman, and then maybe adding in a false 9 to change things up a little bit and add an extra number into the midfield. This is something we could see. I wouldn't hang my hat on it, but I just wanted to put it out there because I think it's something that's absolutely not impossible, and it's quite interesting to conceptualize as something we could potentially see at Estadio Azteca, though it really does come across as playing for a point, which is not the approach I want to take. Personally, I think we should go for all 3 points at Azteca. We're capable of doing it. Our team is good enough to do it. Mexico, their individual players are in good form right now. It's worth noting, but the team itself hasn't been at its best recently in World Cup qualifying. So this is an opportunity to get the 3 points at Azteca, something we've never done in history. What better time than now, because this is the last chance we'll ever get to do just that. But before you go, thanks for watching. Don't forget, as I said before, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on the other social media platforms. But other than that, let me know what your thoughts on the roster are, and I will see you guys very soon.